today we're going to talk about, we kind of call it the International YC Founders Guide to US Corporate Taxes. We launched Fondo in January of 2020. And since then, we work mostly with YC companies. And as you all know, as YC continues to be a global investor, we have the opportunity to work with more and more global companies. So over the past 3 years, we've definitely learned a lot about the different gotchas that people hit along the way before they find Fondo, and try to help get everybody set up appropriately so they don't get any penalties. So I'm David, I'm the founder and CEO. We were in the Winter 18 batch, and we have Stefan here, who's our finance expert and account executive. Just quick background on both of us. Through Fondo, I've helped over 1,000 US and international founders, like with accounting and tax stuff. I started my career as an accountant at Deloitte, then learned how to code and got into startups. So I started a company called Hackbread Academy, which got acquired by a public company back in 2016. I've invested in a lot of startups. So I've kind of seen a lot of like the due diligence process from an acquirer standpoint, from a VC standpoint, and seeing our customers go through that as well. So that's like the context I'm bringing here. And then Stefan is our account executive and finance expert, and also an investor in Fondo, who will do a quick intro as well.
Yeah, thanks, David. Well, I started my career at Deloitte as an accountant, and jumped into startups, operating as an operator of a lot of different startups, including Hackbright, where I worked with David as head of operations and finance. And so sort of led the process on due diligence as we were acquired by a large public company. And I've worked with a number of other startups and venture studios, doing a lot of freelance consulting in the area of finance and operations for startups, along with some investing like in Fondo. And here I am at Fondo now, helping lead our sales and bring on new clients.
Yeah. So thanks. So yeah, and both of us, my mom's from Guatemala, Stefan's dad is from Mexico. And so I just, as far as like context, like I can't imagine moving to Guatemala and learning, starting a business and having to learn the tax rules there. Like, I think that can be definitely a little bit challenging. And so with Fondo, we really want to we basically want to make that part easy for you guys. Like if US tax law isn't your specialty, or bookkeeping, like we want to make that part easy for international founders. So we work with a lot of YC companies, like I mentioned. We have experience working with companies everywhere from like the UK, Sweden, Colombia, India, Nigeria, and Mexico, and a bunch of others. So we definitely have a team that is experienced to answer, your tax and accounting issues that you have related to this running a global business. The typical companies that we see that we can support have a Delaware C Corp as the parent company, and then either one or more overseas subsidiaries. We also do see a lot of companies that just have a Delaware C Corp, and the shareholders maybe are non-US taxpayers. So when you have this kind of setup, the tax compliance is very similar to just a regular Delaware C Corp, but there's some additional things that need to happen because as a global company, there's a lot more risk for penalties. And so we're going to go into that in a second. So first off, like, what are the different startup taxes that you have in the US? So there's 3 buckets of this. So you have payroll tax, you have sales tax, and you have corporate tax for your C Corp. Payroll tax is going to be handled by whatever payroll company you're using. If you're paying people in the US, like Rippling or Gusto or whoever you use is going to handle your payroll tax. You have sales tax compliance, which usually kicks in once you have like 100K or more in sales. This is handled by another software called Avalara. And then you have corporate tax. And so what Fondo specializes in is the corporate tax piece. And so today, that's what we're going to be covering. And so the first thing is, what are the deadlines for US corporate companies? So there's 3 important ones. So January 31st, which is in a few days, is the 1099 deadline. So this is a deadline related to any payments from the US company to any vendors that are more than $600 during the year. You don't owe any money when you make this filing. It's an informational filing for the IRS. You basically have to file it with the IRS as well as the person that you paid. So that's the 1099 deadline. It's due in a few days. And again, I should also say, like, the US tax calendar year is January to December. So all these deadlines during 2023 are related to the 2022 activity between January and December. So January 31st is 1099. The next one is Delaware franchise tax. As a Delaware C Corp, every March 1st, you have to pay what's called Delaware franchise tax. It starts at $450 that you pay to Delaware. It's a tax that's not based on revenue or expenses. It's just based on the assets of the company, as well as the shares issued by the company. And so typically it's $450 minimum. And then for each additional $1 million in assets that the company has beyond 2 million, it's going to be another $400. So seed, pre-seed companies, it's usually $450 a year. Once you're like Series A and beyond, it gets to be, 3, 4, 5,000. Once you're beyond $5,000 in franchise tax, you have to start paying it quarterly. So these are things to look out for. There are penalties if you miss it. It's a $200 penalty for missing the deadline, and then 1.5% interest. I believe it accrues monthly. So that's how Delaware franchise tax works. Then you have your federal and state corporate tax deadline. This is the most important one for global companies. This is April 15th. You do have the option to extend this to October 15th. But this one is definitely, the most important one that I'm going to highlight, because this is the one that you also have the global components. So basically, if you're just a Delaware C Corp here in the US, these are the 3 things you have to worry about. But yeah, once you have an international subsidiary or an international shareholder, these are going to be the global sort of add-on filings you have to do. So the first one here is called Form 5472. This is a form that's filed along with this federal corporate tax return, this is called a Form 1120, due April 15th or October 15th if you extend. You have a Form 5472. Each shareholder that owns more than 25% of the company and has transactions with the company, with the C Corp. So that's the first one that you want to attach. The next one is Form 114, or the FBAR. This is for each foreign financial account that the subsidiary has that has held at some point during the year more than $10,000. That is going to be required for each bank account that you have with the company. And then you have Form 5471. This is probably the most, in-depth additional filing. It's for the international subsidiary. When you file this form, the things that are going to be included on it are going to be all of the financial activity of the subsidiary, so all the financials, as well as all of the ownership information about the company, and then also all the transactions between the US company and the subsidiary. So these are the 3 major add-ons that are due with the 1120. And the reason they are important is because they do have big penalties attached with them, which I mentioned. So if you're late or you don't file the 5472, it's a $25,000 per year per failure to file penalty. For the FBAR, it's $10,000. And for the 5471, it's $10,000. And so, these are all definitely avoidable by just, I think the most unique thing about a global company from a tax side is it is really important to file on time or to file an extension, because then you avoid all this risk.
David, a quick question about these forms. So we are a company based in the US, but I'm the international founder. So do I need to file the Form 5472?
Yeah, so if you are an international founder and you are paid by the Delaware company, or have any transactions, then you would be required to file the 5472. It's part of your your US corporate return.
US corporate return.
Yeah, so this is not like an individual return for you. This would be part of the corporate tax return. So the US company will be filing their corporate return, on April 15th,
Mhm.
that May deadline, and that's when you would attach it.
Gotcha. I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
And for those international founders that own stock in the Delaware C Corp but are paid through the subsidiary?
Yeah, so what the 5472 includes is, the name of the founder, their tax residence, the country of tax residency, the relationship with the C Corp. And then the most important thing is the transactions between the C Corp and that individual. So on the first year of incorporation, that's going to be like when you purchase your stock. So, a lot of people do their, $40 for their common stock purchase. So that's what would be included in year one. And then in year two, if you're paid through deal or like another system through the subsidiary, and there are no transactions between the US company and that shareholder, then you don't have to do the filing. Yeah. Yeah. And so what do you need to do to prepare for these things? So the first thing you need when you file your US return is going to be the financial statements. So, the profit and loss statement, the balance sheet, these are things that are used to prepare your tax return. And then in addition to that, you're going to need the bookkeeping of the subsidiary. So again, on the Form 5471 filing, it's going to include the profit and loss balance sheet and things like that. So you want to provide your US tax preparer with these statements. So if you have your books, you have your subsidiary books, you pretty much have everything you need to hire somebody to do these filings for you. And so, I'll go in quickly, like how Fondo helps with this and why I think a lot of companies would choose us to do this is because we can definitely like help with the basics for you. Like, again, for a global company that's just going through YC, that just did like a Delaware flip, like you really only need the basics. You need your US taxes filed. And so you'll need your US books closed for the year and those filings done. As your company grows, Fondo supports companies from, pre-seed to post-series B. So you can always add things on later, but we definitely can help with the basics. We're familiar with a lot of the tools that most startups are using. So it's easy to work with us. You get a dedicated team at Fondo. So we do all of our onboarding within the Fondo app. We also have email support. And then as a global company, by default, we give you Slack support as well. So, your dedicated team is all on that Slack channel. So if questions come up during the year, what have you, you can always ping us on Slack. We have an annual subscription called TaxPass, which covers these main deadlines. And then, of course, the add-ons that you need to file the 5472 FBAR and 5471. There's also, we can also do the US books for you. When we work with global companies, we also they usually connect us with their accountant in the country of the subsidiary so that we can request the financial statements, ask questions, things like that. Kind of takes more stuff off of your plate. But then we can handle the US books. If you have an accountant that you do like and work well with for your subsidiary, they should be able to prepare your US books for you as well. So those are some of the things that we can help with. And then as you continue to grow your team, if you do hire engineers or product people in the US, you can claim the US R&D credit. It basically is a credit that's given to companies that are either creating or improving new technology. So most startups qualify for this. It's up to $500,000 a year. It's about 10% of your total US based R&D payroll. And so with that as well. But yeah, that pretty much covers everything that I had prepared.